Welcome everyone to the Electrical Culture of Safety Livewire program, where we delve into all the complexities of creating a culture of safety within the electric utility industry. In each episode, we feature interviews with subject matter experts, industry leaders, safety professionals, and field personnel from across the industry, where we discuss ways to develop a collective reflection of the perception, attitudes, and shared experiences of the safety culture within our industry. Welcome to ECOS Livewire. Hey, good morning, Brent.
Michael.
How you doing, bud?
Good, man. So you're getting recuperated from your vacation. You're going to take a vacation from your vacation.
That's right. Going to take a while to catch up on my sleep. It was a great time.
How was your time with your wife in beautiful Maui? How did it go for you guys?
We had a great time. I was talking to Jeremy earlier. Maui, of course, had that big fire last year. I don't know if you remember, but they had a wildfire and the wind came up and it took out the entire town of Lanai, which is the main tourist area for that. At least on that side of the island. And it was heartbreaking because we've been there and it's such a cool little town with all the restaurants and, the Bubba Gump and the Fleetwoods and Cheeseburger in Paradise and all the really cool places. And it's just all gone. Mm-hmm. It's just gone, just like that. Yeah. And so, they're struggling because the tourism dollars aren't coming in but we had a great time. I'm excited to be back. Okay, we haven't recorded in a while. Yeah. So it's good.
No, it's been a while, man. We've been busy. You've been busy and it just hasn't worked out. We got so many things going on.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm really excited about today's guest. Miss
Cheryl has an amazing story, and it's a story that everyone should actually take note within our industry, no doubt.
Yes, I concur. And just a couple of things, and then we'll bring Cheryl on. But to see where she came from and where she is now, and especially, I think how quickly she was able to do what I'm really interested to find out how all that happened and some of the hurdles that she had to go over maybe to get where she's at and then of course her philosophy on safety and some of the things that she's doing to keep her people safe because we see it every week, Brent. The things are still happening almost weekly. We're still having the contacts and anyway. So our guest today is Cheryl Richardson. She is currently the CEO of H.Richardson Sons, a power line contractor with a fiber division and HRS Forestry. And we'll have her talk a little bit about what that all entails. But they've got about 100 employees. They've got 75 linemen. They've got journeyman treemen. They've got fiber technicians, and so they're involved in quite a bit. And I'm really excited to have her come on and tell us her story. So, you got anything to add, or should we bring Cheryl on?
No, I'm ready to have Cheryl visit us and let's have some fun talking for a while.
Okay. All right. Let's bring on Cheryl. Hey, Cheryl.
Hey guys. How are you?
Good. How are you this morning? Afternoon?
Yeah.
Good.
You doing well, Cheryl?
I am doing well. Yes, I am. I'm happy to be here. Good. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Absolutely. Yes. So you're down in Florida, correct?
I am in New York State.
Oh, for some reason, I thought you had moved to Florida or no, never. I'm thinking of somebody else, I'm sure. So,
Mike, you know what happened? We talked when I was in Florida. That was the first time I spoke to you. That's why you're thinking that. Yep. It was a vacation. Yep.
That's right. You were in Florida at the time.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
well, good. So Cheryl, what we'd like to do, of course, is find out a little bit about you. We want to know what your live wire story is. That's we are very interested in as I've read some of your bio, I've been very interested to kind of hear your story on how you got from working at Target, right, clear up to where you're at now, and it looks to me like you did it in a relatively short period of time.
In terms of learning this business, you mean, right?
Yeah.
So, right. So I did start at Target. And one thing that I mentioned before I even start to talk is that I definitely don't have any experience in the utility business.
Right.
I started at Target, moved up there. I started honestly in high school as a fitting room attendant and moved up to being a store manager there over a period of about 8 years. After that, I bought a bar and a restaurant with an outside concert venue and worked on that for about 3 years. That was really the first time that I hadn't worked my way up in a business. So I came into a business at the top, not knowing anything about the bar or the restaurant business, and really just had to start to kind of collaborate at that point, learn who to trust, learn who I could listen to and who I could trust and kind of run with. After that bar and restaurant, I moved up to the North Country in New York State. I got into banking, learned quite a bit of finance there. And then for the last 20 years, actually, I was managing a surgical practice. And I joke that management position was probably the most helpful with my job right now because surgeons' personalities are very much like the lineman personality in terms of being like a type A, pretty self-centered, pretty self-important, those sorts of things. And I'm not saying that in a bad way because certainly what they're doing is, like I say, 99.9% of the population cannot do what they're doing. So I get it. That's why they have that personality. But when I was in that position, there was a lot of dysfunction within that practice. I took a lot of pride in that practice because when I got there, it was myself, one surgeon, and we grew that to 7 providers and 4 locations. So took a lot of pride over that 20 years. But going from a type A personality with dysfunction to type A personalities without dysfunction was incredibly refreshing. Like I could do that, right? I had way worse. I could do that. So coming into this business, it wasn't at all the lineman personality was not at all shocking. Plus my husband's a lineman, my son, my brother-in-law. So I had some idea of what we were looking at there. When I came into the business, we were pretty small at the time. I think we had like 5 trucks, no forestry, no fiber. So
at that time you were just a line, a utility contractor. You were building line.
Correct. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. We had some issues. We had one office who was handling everything in terms of invoicing, project management, estimating, and we had some issues with that office, some pretty big flags. So I let those people go and began my own office and kind of filled that in. And I'm in the North Country on the St. Lawrence River, so we don't have a lot of people in my small town that have any construction experience in the office. So I really had to bring people in. I brought people I knew from the medical field and trained them. And that's worked out really well. Actually, our estimator right now is a woman who came out of the medical field, as well as our invoicer. So that worked out well for me. And I would say this, even though I didn't have experience in the utility industry, I think you learn from good bosses and bad bosses. And I think you learn from good environments and bad environments. And the one thing I learned was that I wanted to have an environment of respect and trust and all those things we all want, right? And I was in a really good position to start to build that because we were still small, and I knew that I personally valued those things. So that's kind of the basis of where I started here.
Excellent. Which, of course, if you can establish that type of basis, that kind of environment, a lot of other things I think come much easier. It's really hard to go back. Especially when you're growing, that it makes it tough to go back. So, that's great. There's a couple things I wanted to to talk about, one of the things you mentioned in this thing you sent me, you talked about, and I think this is critical, and I see this in a lot of things I do. You mentioned there was a few things that kind of caught your eye, caught your attention, and safety decisions seem to be from the top down with no input from those in the field. And I think that is it's so prevalent in our industry, where management is making all the decisions. They don't involve the guy in the field making those decisions. So how has that impacted your business? How have you tried to corner that?
Right. So yeah, one of the things being an outsider that I definitely noticed was the whole, we call it sometimes command and control, in which people in the field are being told, do this, where this hive is, do this now. We're going to be checking boxes and watching you and that sort of thing. And I guess from an outsider, it was surprising to me that the people who are doing the work were not ever being asked their opinions or their input. And maybe they're, we all, even when I collaborate with my team, if I ask someone's input and it isn't going to work in the big picture, I go back and explain to them, this is why this won't work. But in this case, we were watching this happen over and over, and they were just being told what to do. And I'm going to say that really the point where I think we turned the corner was when Billy Martin came in to work with us, because I knew that, and I may or may not have mentioned it in my bio, but when I came in, we didn't really have a safety department. We didn't have a safety officer. The person who I had let go was going to bring in a chiropractor to be our safety officer, and I knew that was not the right thing to do. I knew that we needed to have someone who had gone through the apprenticeship, been a lineman, understood the work, basically really had the respect of the men. That's really important. Mm-hmm. So the first thing I did were, just checking the boxes, right? We hired a safety officer. We got him a checklist. We started printing things off the internet, and every week we did the safety meeting. But I felt like we were the things we were doing were okay, but they were just like the illusion of safety, if I can say that. We weren't really doing anything to protect the guys. We were doing what everyone else had done all along, not getting ahead of anything, not being proactive, but really being reactive that way. So Billy really helped us there. We did a whole rollout with him at the hall with we brought everyone in. We did 3-hour meetings because the guys in the field do not want to sit for any longer than 3 hours. It is torture for those guys. So 3 hours max. Talked about all of his ideas. Billy kept using the words, what do you think? What do you think? We need to start asking, what do you think? You need to stop thinking that your ideas don't matter. You're intelligent guys out there. You know what you're doing. You're experts. And I think that is the whole thing that started it. And so now when we go out into the field and do roles concerns, which I actually like the pause and sync verbiage better. But when we go out to do those, that's when we really ask the guys, what do you think about these things? And if I do an initiative in my company at all, I ask for people's opinions and we collaborate. And that's not really a master plan, Mike. I had to do that because I really didn't know what I was doing in the beginning. So it's worked out well. We've grown that, and that's worked out well.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah. And one of the things you mentioned too, and this is part of it, that there just seemed to be a lot of punitive policies. In other words, part of that reactive thing we do, we go out and we do what we call an investigation. There's always somebody to blame. And so, and I still see this over and over. I'm dealing with a situation now with a company that just had a grounding incident. They had someone take a ground off with his bare hand, and he survived, but it was close. I mean, it was a serious thing, and I can't talk too much about it. But one of the things that we always see come out of that is, okay, this individual violated a rule, right? Which he did. He violated a rule, but we never try to figure out why he violated that rule. It's just the way the industry works. Somebody's responsible, and it's always the guy in the field that's responsible. So how is it you trying to change that way of thinking at your company, and how do we, I don't know if you've had any serious incidents, since you took over.
So we haven't had any fatalities or injuries, but we've definitely had incidents. And the one thing I'm going to say that outside the box, but I want to expand on this, is that I'm not sure that grabbing the job brief after an incident and reviewing that to use it as a weapon at someone is the right thing to do, because I think we're creating a situation where when there's a purpose of the job brief, certainly, but I think when the guys fill it out now, they're filling it out to protect themselves because if there's an incident, someone's going to look, and they have 1,010 moving parts out there. They cannot list every single thing on that job brief. We all know that. So that certainly is a concern to me. I think that, here's an example of punitive in the very beginning when I didn't have the ideas. We had an underground utility strike, a gas main actually over in Colony, New York. And the JL who put the auger in the ground, he was looking at some dig safe markers, but they were quite old. And I have a feeling he realized they were quite old and weren't the recent ones we had called in. And after that incident, we put every single person in our company through a dig safe training, 4 hours of sitting in front of a computer and answering questions. Now, certainly there may have been a place for some of the people, maybe our apprentices, but the guys who have been out in the field working with this for 25 years, we were really just punishing them. They understand dig safe, they understand how to read the report, understand how to look at the markings. So that was something that we did that, quite frankly, I don't think it helped a whole lot of people other than to make them say, hey, something happened. One person did something wrong over here, so we're going to punish all of you. Exactly. So I guess that's the thing. We've changed that way, and I really hope we don't ever do that again with the whole company, punishment.
Exactly. And that was another thing that I wanted to kind of focus on that you had talked about, because it's something that I've been kind of noticing for years, and where that whole job briefing process has gone. And you're absolutely right. We've turned that into and a lot of it's driven by management, not the guys in the field. Mm-hmm. It's management. Something happens, and you're right. We need a new box, right? Mm-hmm. We need a new box, and it just seems to me like we're seeing things that are simply good, because the first thing that the guys get asked for when something goes wrong is, "Where's your job briefing?" And there's nothing on that document, that really tells me anything other than they checked the box. And it doesn't tell me they talked about anything. It doesn't. This incident I was talking about to you a little bit earlier, they checked the box that said grounding, right? So it in some people's minds, they look at, they covered that. They covered it, So have you done anything to change that process on the ground for these guys to kind of go beyond?
So we've started that change, and again, this is a Billy Martin plan. After Billy went out in the field to talk about roles of concerns, he came back and we did the whole mental rehearsal thing, which is all about a man down and figuring out what to do if there's a man down. And when he was back doing that, he also talked about the roles of concerns again. We had, in one of our shops, we had a JL and a working foreman and a general foreman get together after he left and said, we like the roles of concerns, but when the guys fill out the job brief, they're going to forget to do this. They're going to sign off and go to work. They just want to get to work and they're going to forget about it. So we actually changed our job brief a bit, took off some of the things that we don't want to add to our job brief. We don't want to add boxes or anything to our job brief. But we took off a few of the things in there that weren't practical. And at the end of the job brief, where normally they would just sign off, there's a section where they put in the roles of concerns that they have. Now, that's somewhat helpful, but this is what I would love to see. And I know this is too much for right now, but right now, when guys fill out job briefs, we know what happens. The working foreman gets in the cab of the truck, here's his clipboard, fills the whole thing out, comes out. Maybe he reads it. Maybe people are paying attention. Maybe we don't know what's going on. It's not interactive. They're narrating. So people are, not getting it.
Correct.
I would love to see for that working foreman to just fill in the top of the job brief, the line they're working on, the safety man, his phone number. And after that, when you get down to tasks for the day, get out and get the guys in a circle and actually syncing and ask apprentice number 1, what do you see as a task for the day? And then jail number 2, what do you see we should add to this? And same thing with hazards and mitigations. I think it should be a discussion. And we did when we were doing the roles of concerns practice in one of our show-ups, they were when they got to the roles of concerns, they were looking around and someone looked down the line, the next pull down and said, hey, there's a cross arm down there. It looks like it's pretty damaged. And as they looked at that, they realized that the guy wire was going to be in the way when they tried to move the primaries, or one of the wires, I should say. I don't know that, but that's the kind of thing I think they should be talking about. Interacting, one guy come in with an idea and that kind of cascades in another guy's idea, and they have a discussion about the job instead of being narrated, a form that they're half listening to. Exactly. I haven't pushed, I can't get the whole interactive thing going yet. It's like baby steps, but that's where I'd like for us to get to.
Yeah, we've got to get to that point. And again, I can't talk too much about this incident, but you got an incident where they know they have induction. They've done some, they did their de-energizing. They went to measure test for de-energized. And of course they know they've the nominal voltage is no longer there, of course, because they've opened the device, but they've measured 5,000 volts of induction, right? Well, that should be a really, really large red flag, right? And there were some things about that particular incident that if they'd have done what you're talking about, Cheryl, they'd have had those conversations. And I don't know yet just how much was done, but these are things that can be easily eliminated. All these things that we see happening, all these contacts, which is our biggest problem, is contact. There's nothing mysterious here, right? They're all things that can be easily identified and mitigated. There's no, but why is it that our industry is just still having to contend with so much of this? And I think there's two areas, and maybe you can address. We've already addressed one, and that's the job brief. I think we can do a much better job there, because as an industry, we have gone completely 180 degrees, in my view, on what OSHA intended when they gave us that requirement back in 1994. It's completely gone to a document, right? That's all we're doing. And I've seen some of these that are 4 pages long. And how can you possibly, another thing I think that and maybe you can talk to this a little bit about, how are we training our guys, our foremen, our crew leaders in the field? Are we giving them the tools to be able to do those things that we expect them to do?
And are you talking, Mike, about like leadership skills that yes. Just because they're the best lineman in the air, they're not the best leader, right? Yeah. So I definitely saw deficiency there. We have brought in some leadership training for our guys, and I'm going to be honest with you. The last one was probably about a year ago. But what I found is, because we retain employees, the general foremen that we had a year ago are still with us, and I feel like for our company, and I'm not saying training is important, it definitely is important, but for our company, I think modeling is so important. And our general foreman, I think they get it. They understand the leadership portion. They understand the respect portion in the company. And I also feel like if they are understanding those things and they're talking well with the company and being respectful, it's going to trickle down to the guys in the field. So I guess that would be my comment about that. We do a lot of evaluating of how people are doing as working foremen and whether they're training. I was out with the crew last week, and we were talking about the apprentices, and the non-working foreman was telling me that he has a certain step for apprentices, and they start with the guy who does everything by the books, and then they go to the next working foreman who has some other ideas about things, and so on. So he has like a step procedure for his apprentices, and that's kind of where I want us to be with as a company, thinking about how to train people and move them along, I guess.
Yeah, Cheryl, when you came into this industry, you brought with you some skills and understanding that most of the industry that we work in today is truly lacking, and you understand that the physics and the physical, the nouns that our industry has been working with for decades and decades and decades. We've got that, the boxes, the equipment, the knowledge, the training, we got all that. But when you came into this industry, you brought something to it that actually had a big void. It was a huge void. And a couple of those things, none of them are about the noun. You brought in rules for human connectivity and engagement from your experience at these other professions. One of them, communication, valuing the person, valuing their ideas, and respecting people. And those four items are so needed to change this dynamic of the same old of reacting, like you called it, reacting, and becoming proactive. And those verbs, those gifts that you brought to the industry, and you recognize those same gifts in Billy, who can help and has strengthened your gifts that you already had with his gifts. So now you and Billy are connecting, and now you're bringing that interconnecting, that human interconnection to all your crew members, all your foremen, your general foreman, and your entire company. So now you're creating this grid of interconnecting where we have that free energy, and we're becoming stronger from the free energy, and we become more, like I always like to call it, aligned team. And that's really what you all are doing. You're forming a line team right here.
Yeah, I would love to take a lot of the credit for that, but a lot of the things I did were honestly out of ignorance. And I want to tell you one thing I did that I had found out later. So we a couple of years ago, we had a project in, I want to say it was Binghamton, New York, and we were on a tight schedule. We were working for a company who had more work for us if we could make the schedule. And I could see we had 2 or 3 crews there. We were not going to make it. So there was a show up that was 2 hours from there. And I reached out to that general foreman and I said, is there any way you could just send 2 crews over there for 2 weeks, just Monday through Friday? They stay over there, they help us, and we can make that schedule. And we had 2 crews agreed to do that. So they were over there for 2 weeks, went back to their own show up on Monday. It was their first Monday back from their 2-week stint away. And I texted each of the guys. I don't like group text when you're thanking someone. I texted them each individually, just said, hey, thank you so much for taking time away from your family. We were able to make our goals and our schedule, and we're going to get more work from this, and you're a part of growing the company. And so I was talking to one of the working foremen about 6 months ago, and he said, do you know when I decided to stay with this company? I said, no. He said, when you sent that text out, because no one had ever thanked me for leaving my family for 2 weeks. And that was like zero, almost no effort, right? Like little tiny things that these guys had never seen before that make them connect and buy in and engage, and all those things we're looking for. So I didn't have a master plan. I cannot say that. I just did things that I thought I would like people to appreciate, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's key is everybody wants to be treated fairly, right? And we expect that, but yet sometimes management, they don't make that connection. It's we're in charge, and you just do what we tell you to do when we tell you to do it. Mm-hmm. And it to me, it's a little more complicated than that, and Brent and I and others, we're trying to what we're trying to accomplish with what we're doing, and maybe we're making a difference or not, I don't know, but we got to change these guys into this team format. We're not a crew out there, we're a team, and we got to start working like that. And one of the things, Cheryl, that is frustrating, as long I'm in my 50th year, so I've seen a lot of stuff over these years, and every time we have something happen, we have somebody make contact or some other serious injury or fatality on a job site. And what's frustrating is there's more than one person there when this happens, right? And so there's a couple of things that either people aren't watching, or people are just not. There's an inability for these crews to speak up, and I think there's so much complacency that gets into our business, and our teams have this what's called optimism bias, which is they don't believe it can happen to them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they hear it happening to everybody else. We've done this a million times. You know, we've worked this close to energized lines without putting any cover or on or PPE. We know how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you get that team element to where an apprentice can speak up, you know, and say, "I'm out. Let's stop."
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, I talk to guys all over the country, and these things, you know, these apprentices, if anybody tries to speak up, you know, the guy in the bucket's telling them, "Shut the hell up. You know, we know what we're doing." And so you've just shut down that apprentice's. He'll never speak up again,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody on the crew. So how do we get that? We have to eliminate this optimism bias.
So one thing I think, and I know when I talk in Orlando, I have this little pyramid that looks like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and you know the bottom is biological needs, and the top you have like self-actualization or something like that. But you can have the bottom with the biological needs, and the second one up on the tier can be tangible safety, because all those nouns that Mike was talking about, you don't need a whole lot of it. You don't need engagement and trust in those things in order to further those. You can watch those,
Right.
but I think, you know, we talk about the whole Tim Clark's book, The 4 Stages of Psychological Safety. Up above the tangible part are things like belonging and feeling and not being shamed or embarrassed or any of those things. And that is where, until you develop your culture like that, I don't think we can progress the intangibles, the psychological safety, the teamwork, the engagement. I think there's like hard work to be done in terms of getting a culture that's ready to accept those things. And certainly we know that, you know, they have the best fall protection, they have the best high vis, you know, we're using all the best nouns, but the way we can progress at this point, because I know that I don't think the fatalities have changed in like 11 years. They haven't gotten any better. The only way I think to do that really is to build. You have to start. And the other thing I'm going to talk about in Orlando, like Billy talks about a couple small changes to improve your safety or psychological safety. I'm going to talk about 2 small changes to make in your culture to improve your culture so that you can actually move on to psychological safety, because you can't just drop it into a company that doesn't have trust or engagement or respect, or any of those things. It's not going to go anywhere. It's hard enough to develop.
No.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So Cheryl, I like one of the changes your IP, your incident prevention, the magazine article that you wrote recently. I really like that. And you mentioned in there, one of the big changes you did is after the job brief that you all intentionally get together in a huddle, in a circle, and discuss concerns. Each team member discuss concerns one at a time. How did you get that developed, and how was it received, and are you seeing changes?
Right. So, you know, that is all the Billy Martin stuff. And the first time I met Billy, he came over to my office and he gave me kind of a mini example of how he trains people. You know, once you see the cow, you can't unsee the cow, and all of his little props and things like that. So I wanted our field people to understand that. And I also knew that they were not going to be able to, he couldn't just show up in the field and start to talk to them. They had to have some kind of a window into that. So that's where we started that 3-hour meeting at the show up before he went out in the field. And then Billy went out in the field. We have a great safety supervisor. His name is Steve Martin. And so Billy can be a little bit tricky to connect with at times because he has so many ideas and so much knowledge, but Steve connects with him extremely well. So the 2 of those guys went out in the field and got the guys in the huddle to do that. I think, it is so hard to change practices. It is so hard. I would say we are maybe at 30 to 40% of people doing that right now. Steve Martin, our safety specialist, is now going to a show up at a time, spending 2 days there and trying to kind of make that a habit with those guys. It's not easy. I can't say it's easy. Changing those habits and even some of the language, rows of concerns. That's why I kind of like the pause and think part. Some of the language just also can turn these guys off. So I'm not going to say it's easy. It's definitely tricky.
Yeah, it's it's linemen we're a different breed, right?
Mm-hmm.
we're just programmed to do things, and like you said, the language, trying to introduce a different way of thinking, and some of these things that Billy and others, are, it's all about changing the entire approach, the way we've always done it. And it's a hard nut to crack. It's not done overnight. It's not going to be an easy thing. And we're going to stumble and fall, right?
Mm-hmm.
But, it's necessary. And if we get the right people to have that interaction with our crews, we can change that. I know we can. I've seen it happen. I've been on job sites in the last 6 months where I've seen some changes being made. I've seen some changes about the way that that people do their job briefings, and I'll be honest with you. I think that again, that form that we use it distracts from what really should be done. We programmed these guys to just create this document and check so we got to change that. And we that circle, getting guys in, and I call it a huddle, just like a football team, huddling before they go out and run a play. You've got to give people that opportunity to express a concern, right? And otherwise, it's just going to keep going the way it's going.
Yeah, I know this is way out there, but why, a start to that would be, don't pull the job brief when there's an incident, because it's really not going to tell you anything. They have a job brief. They fill out the same every day. If we stop pulling it, they may stop thinking it's a weapon and start actually paying some attention to talking about it instead of being worried about it, I guess.
Exactly, because I can't, like I said, every time something happens, if we have a contact or we have somebody fall, or I don't care what it is, the job briefing's been done. There isn't a line crew out there that's not creating that document. It's sitting on the dash of a pickup somewhere.
Yeah.
It's there, and it's the first thing that gets asked for. Sometimes it gets asked for before we even find out if anybody's hurt.
Yes.
Right? Where's the job brief? Did they do a job brief? Right? Because we got to cover somebody's butt here.
Right.
And I don't know. It's so frustrating to see what's happened to that process. And, OSHA, there's no OSHA requirement to document that job brief. I'm not saying it shouldn't be, but some form of documentation, but there is no requirement anywhere to document a job briefing. And there's certainly not a requirement to have one 4 pages long with all kinds of information that really doesn't pertain to that job and the hazards with that job. So that's got to change.
Yeah, I joke, but I honestly think that the attention to the job brief is inversely proportional to the number of check boxes on there. Once you're at 4 pages, you're you're just checking things and keep moving.
It's exactly. I agree that. I think that's a big key to this, and I think the whole leadership thing is another key, and we just look for people that can build line, and they're good at building line, and we put them in these leadership positions, and that doesn't make you a leader. Obviously, that's some of these guys, like I said, are really good at building power line, but man, they don't know anything about running being a leader of a crew, and it's just not. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. So you had mentioned in your little bio here that you've kind of given your guys kind of a free rein, to, there's not a lot of micromanaging going on.
Right. So we have 5 show ups, and certainly there's a certain umbrella of expectations and safety that the company insists on. But these guys they're pretty autonomous, and they plan everything. They order their own material, they plan their flagging, they plan every single aspect of their job. And I think what that creates is really a little bit more job satisfaction. They're not worried that poles aren't going to show up. They know what's going on. They can plan everything. I know that if we have a priority list 1 through 10, and they start working on 1 and they skip down to 5, I know that they couldn't get an NRA, so they didn't make raise that day, or they were on a circuit that happened to be 1 and 5, so they went down dead. I don't call and say, hey, what are you doing on 5? What's going on? It's just a respect thing, right? That I trust them. I know they're intelligent, and I know they're interested in the company doing well.
Right.
So for me, it creates there are a lot of rewards, but basically you have buy-in. And when those guys start saying good things about the company, people listen who are working with them. And it isn't like I'm trying to fake out the company's good, but the good information comes from these guys. And so we definitely treat these guys well and give them the opportunity to know they're trusted.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah, that's good, Cheryl. That's good to develop and encourage that role in leadership. But not only that, but consciously the other team members are seeing this and experiencing this and watching this. So in a way, as they see this happen, these events that you've established for the guys he's tasked to take care of, in a way, they're learning them at the same time by being witnesses of these things. And you also, another thing I notice is the mental rehearsals that you all develop as far as going through the possible worst case scenarios and medical situations where there is an injury or an incident that takes place. And as far as what are each team member's roles, what does that look like, and talking about it and mitigation of those things. And I think that's very interesting too, to take a little bit of time after the job brief, take a little bit of time and discuss these things before we just jump in the bucket, before we start getting in position, before we start climbing poles or getting our hot stick out. I like that little pause to further the engagement and the human interaction between your line team. I like that. Talk a little bit about that for us. And I know that's Mr. Billy. Mr. Billy is so awesome about that.
Yeah. A funny thing happened when I was speaking about the fact that we went over to the hall and we had the 3-hour meetings. Billy brought 3 guys up front and went through with him what to do. And it was kind of funny because one of the working foremen said at the meeting, I don't really know what to do if my working foreman was down or if there was a guy down in the bucket, but if it really happened, I would know what to do. And it's exactly the opposite. If it really happens, you're flooded with emotion. You're not going to know what to do. Yes. And, there's a lot to be said for, we can't just again, the whole dictating to people and saying, first you call 911, someone finds the AED, someone does this. If they don't do that, if they don't actually interact with that or actually physically do that, they're not going to remember any of that. And what we found with Billy was that the first time they did it, they were very awkward. We don't know where the AED is. Yeah. One guy's a deer in the headlights, doesn't know what to do. And then the second time they got a little better. And by the third time they were experts. And that again is really that whole preparation or those rehearsals, those are really from a place of respect. It isn't going to it's going to help us in terms of incidents, but if anything does go wrong, we don't want anyone to have the guilt of not being able to respond appropriately or being responsible for a whole lag in time so that something that slightly bad turns super bad. So that's really the reason we're doing that. Just to, I think it's called muscle memory or something like that. Once you've done it or talked about it, you're going to remember it more than if someone just tells you about it and you try to remember it. So that's where we're at on that.
Excellent. Yeah. Excellent. Yeah, there's a lot of pieces to it. And you're right when it comes to everybody thinks they know what they'll do if something happens, but there's a lot of things that can happen. It's and we tend to focus on 1 or 2 scenarios. Everybody knows how to run the controls and get somebody down to the ground, right? But we put everything in these little boxes and we expect everything to happen a certain way, and it's not that simple. It's really not that simple. And I've interviewed a lot of people after, something serious, and for the most part, guys, they we got a lot of smart people out there and they figure things out, but they will tell me, if we'd ever practiced this, it would have went, or at least talked about it, right? It would have been a lot smoother. And another thing, Cheryl, that I think is important is if you give people the opportunity after that job briefing to say, okay, guys, if this happens, what are we going to do? Right? Because once you start talking about that, you're going to start thinking about, okay, how could this happen?
Yeah.
Right. And that's where that conversation gets going. Because that's what we have to do is these guys have to start talking in this huddle about the bad stuff, right? What's the worst thing that can happen? And when we're doing this, what's the worst that can happen? And once you start doing that and talking about, okay, if it does happen, or this is what we're going to do, to me, it goes to how are we going to make sure it doesn't happen? And I think that's a very important part of it.
Yeah, it's all about predicting, I think. And we talk about sometimes when we talk about the whole intangible or the connected safety, how hard it is to measure and how hard it is to see if you're actually seeing results with these guys. But a funny story is that we had a show up where an apprentice turned in a lineman for poor workmanship to the general foreman, which it was an apprentice. So maybe we do have a little bit of see something, say something there. I don't know. But that happened. And then a couple of weeks later, that same JL wired a termination poorly to the point where the splice team out in the field refused to use it. And I got a call from the working foreman of that team saying to me, this happened with this guy and this happened with this guy. We can predict something bad's going to happen. You need to be paying attention. And we would never talked about predictions before we talked about connected safety. We wouldn't even use that word. So I think that's one of the things that maybe is a little bit of a success, a little bit of a measuring stick for us, to have guys start talking about predicting for the worst, because like you say, they have the whole optimism bias. They think it can't happen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So Cheryl, it's interesting listening to you, your past, all the things that you've gone through, experiences in life, and basically working with people, communicating and figuring things out, best practices and all that. There's something that you bring to the table that is crucial in this whole social experiment that I would like to have folks that listen to this podcast to truly look inside of them and themselves and take to heart this one thing. And that one thing is, it's something that I experimented with recently on a travel trip, training trip. And it was neat to see. I don't see this very often. And I see this with what you're talking about and what your company is going through and the changes, the line team and all that. And that's a huge change in our industry, but humility and to the point to where you seek others to boost your position, where you're not above them talking down at them, but you're with them talking to them and you're listening to them. And it's one-on-one. And this is so important because so many places, coast to coast, that I've been to, north and south, so many places, it's the exact opposite, to where the command and control is in play, and you can feel it, you see it, and you witness it. You don't see an incident happening, but you can predict that something's going to happen. You can predict just from attitude. And I would like to have people to take special attention to what you're building and what you're building through other people assisting and helping you together. And it's a beautiful thing. And it's something that we need to, as an industry and a wonderful trade, is we need to allow those walls and those divisions to disappear. They have to just disappear. And we have to wake up with a new attitude and a new consciousness of working together side by side with one another and developing these relationships and encouraging positive attitudes and team building constantly. And I see that with everything that you're doing. And, we could all improve no matter where we're at today. But I see through the steps that we're not getting to a level that Miss Cheryl is satisfied with. And that's it. We stop. Okay, here we are. No, I see the steps where we're continually improving, continually learning from one another and engaging. I love that.
Yeah, you're right. I think that sometimes there's a little bit of intimidation with the men in the field in this industry. Like I say, they're type A. They can appear arrogant at times. And I think I'm going to liken it to this. If you're in school and you have a bully in school, and you really want to connect with that bully, you don't bully them. You simply treat them with respect, and sometimes you get respect back, right? And again, this was not a master plan for me. All of these things happened by chance. I didn't have a plan for this, but I think that what I by accident fell into was that if you respect these guys, they're going to respect you back, and you have to grow. It's a baby step thing. I'm not saying it's easy or it's overnight, but I think that once you start to show them respect, and they're very surprised by that in the beginning, but once they realize it, and you also can't talk the talk and not walk the walk, because they can see through that in a second. So if you're going to say you're going to respect them, you have to respect them. Everything you do has to respect, the human beings that work with you. So I think that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Yeah, and you're right. It's people love that pat on the back. People love, I've seen so many programs come and go. We always try to do these safety incentive things where we give them trinkets and, we give them gift cards and think that that's going to change behavior. And that doesn't do it. Right. It just isn't going to change behavior. And it encourages people to, depending on the program, to keep things quiet, because we might lose this pizza party or whatever it is, but going out and telling people, you know what, you guys are awesome. And someone in your position, Cheryl, the responsibility that you have is tremendous. I mean, it truly is. You got to make money. You got to have a business that operates lean and efficient, and you can't do that if you've got a crew that where you don't have that respect that you're talking about, and they think you're doing things behind your back. It just doesn't work, especially in a small company like yours. Things got to click. And I just think your story is awesome. I think that a lot of people can learn a lot of stuff from Cheryl, and it's going to be exciting to see where things go, Cheryl.
Thank you. Now we have to add accountability into that, because if you just give people respect and pat on the back, I've had to let a couple of general foremen go. So there definitely is the message within the company that we're going to give you respect, but you also have to give us respect back and do your job and be accountable.
There
definitely
has to be, and I accountability is a tough one, of course. And most companies do it wrong. Most companies that I deal with, their accountability process is very old school, right? Somebody breaks a rule, they got to go, and we don't really take the time to analyze the big picture. Why are people breaking these rules?
Right.
Yeah. And there's a lot more to it than just a rule, So we fire somebody, and then, like you said, we put another box on the job brief. So excellent.
Yeah, so I think if you're going to call yourself a learning organization, you actually have to be a learning organization, and that doesn't mean firing someone if something happens. It means
exactly
really, we've talked about our next step with incidents, and if there's an incident, again, what I would really like to do is to send everyone home who's involved in that. Everyone in the show up home, say, hey, I want you to make notes about everything that happened today. If Tom made a comment about Drew's girlfriend and Drew got mad, put that in there. Let's talk about cognitive space and things like that. And then, so go home, make all the notes. The next day we're going to get together, not in a conference room, not at the show up, someplace informal. There's no shame. There's no blame. Nobody's going to get fired. We just want to learn from this. We want to hear everyone's honest opinion. So I think that if we're going to call ourselves a learning organizations, we have to stop firing people and just dealing with it. That's a quick, easy fix, right?
Exactly. Makes the problem go away.
Yeah.
So, Miss Cheryl, I'm in contact with many people that are in the safety aspect, operations managers and superintendents and things, that I am personally aware that they are changing their culture and in a positive manner and making changes similarly than what you are working on in your company. And would you mind if I gave them your contact information that you all can network and work off each other and further that endeavor?
That would be great. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And I'm looking forward to incident prevention coming up, meeting you face to face, hearing you speak.
Looking forward to
that.
Yeah, and Steve's coming with me. So he's a little bit outside of the box safety man. It'll be fun.
No, this is great. Outside the box, bring them inside the box. And, that's that leadership and sharing responsibility thing. I think it's, in fact, you know what? It's interesting you brought that up, but I've spoken with a couple of linemen that have been to the incident prevention conference. Mm-hmm. And I believe that these companies, employers, need to start integrating their employees, not just the safety people, to go to these conferences, but I would like to see more, even a few apprentices from time to time, journeyman linemen. I would like to see the Steves of this world come into these conferences. I think it's really very extremely important that we do that and allow that to happen.
Yeah.
That's a really good idea. Yeah, I agree with you.
Another thing, guys, I know we're getting close to an hour here, but wouldn't it be great if we could get to a point where we didn't need the safety guy anymore? I mean,
we got to have a coach. I think
you can call him. We're always going to need coaches out there, right?
Yeah, this is where my idea of the safety guy. My idea is he's part of the team, absolutely. Yep. But he's not the safety guy. He's the coach for that environment of safety, that culture of safety. He's just a coach. Yeah. That's it. That's what I like to see.
We got to get rid of this attitude. And I've talked about this before, the holy trinity of uselessness that I found on the lineman subreddit. You got the engineer at the top, you got human resources over here, and at the other corner you got the safety guy, right? And I'm telling you, Cheryl, it just blew my mind. Not the meme itself, but all the comments from linemen talking about how they despise their safety guy and they despise the safety program and everything it's trying to do. Man, I'll tell you, that's got to change, But yeah, I think it'd be really cool if we didn't need safety guys anymore. And truly, if these guys are educated and we can get them, to buy into some of these ideas, we wouldn't need guys out there help. They all know what to do. They all do. Mm-hmm. There is no one of them out there that don't know what they need to do to keep themselves safe.
True.
And we don't need any more rules. We have all the rules we need. We don't need to keep getting our rule book thicker and thicker, but that's what we do. We just keep rolling new stuff out there. So,
well, you guys are going to like Steve because he's much more of a coach than a safety man. So I think you're going to enjoy meeting him and hearing what he has to say. Yeah.
I like that. Coach Steve. Hey, Coach Steve. That makes sense. Yeah. Well, Cheryl, thank you for coming on board and sharing with the ECOS Livewire team. And it'll be great to have you come on, let your culture of safety through your company. and share a lineman safety national webinar as well.
Thank you so much.
No, it's great. I'm excited to get to know you better soon. And then Mr. Mike, appreciate the trim job. We can see your beautiful face a little better.
Yeah, I took about 4 pounds of whisker off, so it had gone on long enough. I'd made my statement, and it was time to, so.
Great.
Excellent.
Well, you all take care, and thank you so much.